Yeah, yeah,
So, so Georgia,
yeah.
where do I start? I've got so many questions for you. Like I said, I'm a big
Oh,
fan, and
oh,
I'm so excited to see you at Mighty Hoopla
yeah.
playing next month. It's like 3 weeks away, isn't it? How excited are
Yeah,
you?
it's
How
actually
excited?
it's really soon, actually, isn't it? I
Yeah,
keep
it's
thinking
coming
it's
around
like,
quick.
oh gosh, scary, actually.
What have you got planned for the show? Like, do you know what your set's going to be? Do you know what can you tell us about the performance?
Well, I don't quite know what the set's going to be just yet because um I have to really think about that. I'm not in rehearsals till sort of a couple of days before then, which is when I sort of go through all the songs, and then sort of on the day we'll come up with some sort of set list. But I mean, it's the live show is very much just me, really. That's what it's. I've tried to experiment with band members and other things, but I think in the end, I keep coming back to just it's something unique about just me on stage and
Yeah,
building the
yeah.
show around that. Um, because I think me alone, I just have this connection with the audience that I think is pretty sort of special. When people see me alone up there, they kind of get it that I'm this kind of artist that, is in the studio alone. Well, obviously I have a team around me, but uh, you know, yeah, I think they sort of see me up there playing the drums, singing, sort of interacting with the audience, and they suddenly go, "Oh, this girl is, I get it." Whereas, like last year, I tried to have a band, and we tried to do some, and I don't know. I think in the end, it's exciting seeing me up there alone. So that's what it will be, and we've got visuals this time. Um, so yeah, it's exciting, and I'm just always every single show or festival that I know is coming up. Well, I try and adapt the set to it because we've prepared all the songs. We can kind of play around with the set list a bit. So with Mighty Hoopla, I know that the crowd are just going to want high energy, positive, kind of, like banging songs. So we'll try and adapt the set to that really,
Have
rather than go sort of introspective.
you played Mighty Hoopla before? Like, have you played or been to Mighty Hoopla in the past?
Yeah, yeah. We actually played it pre-COVID. I've played the
Oh,
festival.
nice.
I've known Glyn, the festival founder for many years, just
Yeah,
because I've always gone to queer club nights. I've always gone to sort of this we very much like the same sort of music. So I've seen Glyn around a lot throughout the years in London. So he's been a big supporter of mine, and kind of got me to play the festival quite early on. So I feel like I'm a bit of a sort of I'm a bit of a Mighty Hoopla kind of baby that's kind of been spawned out of that festival. I really, yeah, I really love the festival a lot.
I want to ask you about like your time in the studio and how you are as a songwriter and recording artist shortly. But when it comes to
Yeah.
live performances, what's the thing that you love most about performing live?
I think it's a form of expression that I just need.
Yeah,
Some people need, um, you know, all sorts to feel validated as their own person on this planet. And I think um, for some reason, as a child, I was born with this urge to just maybe I was an adrenaline junkie kid, that just from the moment kind of got on stage and did that. I just loved it.
yeah.
There was something about it that just felt very natural to me. I enjoyed the high of it. I enjoyed the entertaining the audience part. much to my parents' annoyance and everyone else around
I
me.
mean, your parents are, I mean, your father is quite a prolific artist in
Yeah,
electronic music.
yeah,
And I had read an article about you being on stage when you were 6 at T in the Park in Scotland?
yeah,
So, I mean, you
yeah.
were exposed to it from quite a young age, right? The industry.
Yeah, I sort of say this quite a bit. Like those years were really formative. I
Yeah.
was kind of like a little. My dad band was Left Field, and I was like their little mascot. So I would wherever whichever gig I got taken to, I was always like, "Can I come up on stage? Can I come on stage?" And sometimes my dad was like responsible parent, and like, "No, G, you can't come up." But then the bandmates would get high and drunk, and they'd take me up on their shoulders for one of the songs. And so, yeah, that Tea in the Park show was quite an incredible show because it was a tent, and the Stone Roses were on just before Left Field. And I remember the only thing I remember is Ian Brown kissing my hand, and sort of like hugging me and saying, "Hey, you're going." So yeah, I didn't really, if you're exposed to that as a kid, it's quite an impactful, powerful thing to be exposed to, and the adrenaline of it, and the rush of seeing that many people sort of respond to your kind of like actions and words, and it was
Mm.
just thrilling to me. I didn't find it scary at all, not one bit. In fact, I found it easier to be there than I do in real life. So I know it sounds cheesy to say, but I do miss, like, when I'm not touring, it's kind of a hard thing to adapt to real life, because there's a big part of who I am as a person missing.
Yeah.
So it's hard. I can't really put into words performing, really. It's just it's a part of who I am, and I love it. I mean, I really, it doesn't have to be a huge fucking tent full of people. I love going to open mic nights and just, and anything which sort of just enables me to do it. I love it.
I can only imagine
So yeah.
growing up in that sort of environment, getting those opportunities from such a young age and getting exposed to those type of opportunities is obviously attributed to the confidence that you have as a performer and as a writer in the studio. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I don't know. I was thinking about this recently. I mean, because I watched the Amy film, and although that's a lot to do with addiction and stuff, but um I share her low self-esteem. Um so I can seemingly be very confident, but my self-esteem is incredibly low. So it's like, even though I'm performing and da da da, it still doesn't really, it still sometimes doesn't make me happy.
Yeah,
It's a
quite
part of me. It's what
conflicting.
I have to do.
Yeah,
Yeah, but the low self-esteem, I think, is also quite important, because it's the reason why I get into the studio and write. So I think if I was just a confident, high esteem person, I probably just would go fuck it and not be in the studio. So I'm I'd be in a Thailand on an island, just sort of
yeah,
thinking that was life. And I think but definitely performing to audiences, different audiences, has informed music, like how to be in the like what I want to do in the studio, 100%. Like, recently I supported Kim Petras, and that was fantastic because her audiences were very much like I could imagine my audience, my crowd to be as well.
yeah.
So it's really informative to, like, just to think about, okay, well, what, when I'm in the studio, like, what would they want to hear? What would make, I want to see, like, the same crowd jump up and down to my music. So it's like, it definitely does really help, in the context of writing, in terms of like the confidence of like getting into the studio and being, yeah, I guess it's a bit more complicated than that, but um the two are definitely interlinked for me. Yeah, 100%. And I always come off tours feeling incredibly inspired. I never come off them feeling exhausted and drained and want to give up. I always feel like, wow, this is, invigorated. Yeah.
So you released Euphoric last year. So it was July last year, wasn't it? You released
Yeah.
it's your third
Yeah.
album.
Yeah.
How did you feel about the reception of that? Because it's more of a pop record, isn't it, than the previous two?
Don't know really. I think it got deemed as a pop record, but I'm not sure. I didn't have the intention of writing a pop record. Um, I wanted to write a record that was just sounded different and I didn't have too many preconceived ideas. I was obsessed with Ray of Light by Madonna, and like that sort of not being not being kind of uh too defined by it's got to sound like this. Like if it's, I like the nature of that record because it's very explorative within a 3 minute pop song. And so that was kind of the ethos for Euphoric. It really got, people thought it was more pop. Perhaps it was poppier. I didn't think so. I thought Seeking Thrills was way more poppier, but the reception, I don't know. I think it's been mixed, really. I think my fans have loved it, but I think the critics have sort of pulled it apart and kind of thought it was a bit too, I don't know, a bit too maybe they said bit too pop, but I'm not really I'm not really sure what that means because I mean I'm very proud of that record because I made it with a very talented producer called Rostam, and we were very like we spent hours and hours and hours, days, weeks, months on each song, just kind of really going there with production and making it sound like an experience for the audience. But maybe, I don't know, nowadays you've got to be so defined with who you are, and um it's very hard for good records to just come and go, really, because I think perhaps the marketing of the record didn't perhaps match up to the actual music on the record. So maybe people just didn't really get it, and that's okay though, because I sort of feel like with every record that's released, I get to make another one, knowing what I want to change or what I want to improve on. And so I'm very proud of Euphoric. I think it's just hard to release music these days.
Yeah, and I think there's a few artists out there, and you're one of them. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you like to challenge the traditional constructs of music and traditional
Yeah,
processes, don't you? I mean, you can see
yeah.
from what I know about you and from what I've heard
Mm,
on the first three records. That's
mm.
pretty safe to say, right? You like to challenge the
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't like, although I conform to the pop structures and the rules, I don't I don't like to sound like anything like everything else. I want to sound different.
yeah.
Um and that's always been my goal with music, is that my music doesn't sound like anything else, and it's its own universe, and it's its own, has something to say which is interesting for people to listen to. I don't know. I just I, it's it's hard though to swim against the tide, it's hard. And I don't get too afraid though. It kind of pumps me up more. I'm a survivor, I think. I don't know where that's come from, but I think it's just being brought up in London. You just have this kind of like, if something knocks you down, you just get straight back up again.
Yeah, I think you got to have that
Um,
thick skin, don't you?
yeah, it's a bit of a thick skin. It is. It's like I yeah, I hate my music to just sound like everything else. I don't, I because the music that I love to listen to, and particularly singers that I love, and music, even DJs, whatever, that all those people don't sound like anything else. And I've always had a big admiration for people that don't necessarily, that are brave and that are,
To you, and it's been the most influential.
well, I mean, the most influential person for me is Kate Bush. And when she came out, she didn't sound like anything else, and people were like, what the fuck is this? Do we like it? Do we not? And still to this day, when you ask like my mum's generation about Kate Bush, like, oh God, really? You like her? She's, oh God, I couldn't stand her. Um, so yeah, artists like that, I'm gonna say sort of, I mean, I really like Amy Winehouse. She was sort of, when she came along, I don't think she really sounded like, and she's obviously sounded very nostalgic of kind of jazz singers that we love, but at the time she was swimming against a tide of kind of pop music that was, like Dido's, and who I love Dido, but like at the time it was very different. Yeah, yeah. I mean, but that was amazing. That was the standard of pop music back then. The mainstream was artists like Dido, who you look back on and you think they were fucking amazing.
Thank you.
But yeah, but um, yeah, who else? Oh gosh,
I know you're a
I
Billie
mean,
Eilish fan, aren't you?
sorry.
Billie Eilish, you're a fan of, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Billie Eilish. Gosh, exactly. When you stick on Billie Eilish, she just sounds like nothing else. Lana Del Rey, I always have time for Lana Del Rey. She's just like, you put on her records and they sound very much like her own thing.
Very unique.
Very unique, very, very unique. Prince. I always, I love Kim Petras as well. Like when you put on a Kim Petras song, although like the production sounds very like, you know, um, sounds very sort of mainstream pop. What she's kind of doing with her vocals sounds like Peaches. Peaches is another one who I love. The XX. I'm really into this artist at the moment called McGee. He's like this incredible kind of guitarist, soul-y voice, but very almost John Martin kind of voice. Um, Robin.
Classic.
Yeah, I mean, it's just loads of. I mean, they're all quite mainstream now, but
But
I
they're all
think they've.
unique in their own ways, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, you worked with the Vampire Weekend's Rostam on this new record as well. What did you take away from that? What was the main thing that you took away from working with Rostam? Because he had quite a big influence on you in that record, didn't he?
Huge influence. I mean, I've been a sort of fan of Rostam for very, very many, many years.
Yeah.
And I loved his solo record during COVID. Was a very kind of gentle, kind of poppy, but also very indie electronic record that just had this kind of sensibility to it that I really loved. And when he produced Haim, that's another band. They're another band that I love. The Haim record, Women in Music, Part Three. Uh, that record just had such an impact on me, and I was dying to work with him, and I was very, very lucky that he, I don't know how, it's mad. That's the universe. It's such a mad, you know such a mad world. Like I really did put it out there. I was like, how do I get to this amazing musician? And then it just all fell into place. And I did a track with Muramasa, which then he sent the demo to Rostam, and then Rostam messaged me, and then suddenly I was there in his room writing a song, and it was the whole the whole sort of situation was very inspiring, like the whole kind of story of it. Um, and then spending as much time as I did with him, about 4 or 5 months, getting to know him as a person, getting to like learn off him about all, he's very, very his wealth of knowledge about music production and writing music, it's extraordinary. So I very much was just like a sponge. I just wanted to, you know, just to learn off him and have these musical exchanges. And it was, oh gosh, people, even though Euphoric perhaps wasn't as received as what we wanted, what we hoped, or I just wouldn't have changed it for the world for what I learned working with Rostam. And I think it's a good lesson to learn. And if particularly if you're wanting to go on this kind of musical journey and have a longevity in it, if that's your goal, that sometimes it's worth just going the opposite direction sometimes and taking a little bit of a risk, because the rewards are they're great, and I can't just, yeah, I learned so much. And he particularly, that low self-esteem I was talking about, he recognized that in me. And he was very supportive when I was singing on the mic, because that's a very vulnerable, quite daunting situation when you're sitting there or standing with a mic in front of you. And you hear these great records like Whitney Houston or the Arethas, or or even the Dusty Springfields, and Billie Holiday. You hear these singers and you think, like, I don't know what people think. Actually, I'm always listening to the quality of it, but you think this just happened. That they just sung like that, but actually, it's like the sort of mental preparation and the kind of techniques and the time and the effort that goes into actually trying to sing in front of a microphone is extraordinary. And before working with Rostam, I felt like I was getting better at it. But after working with Rostam, I kind of learned how to just drop a facade and expose myself, like go there with the true kind of the emotion and the feelings that I was, and he kind of, I think that came from a kind of relationship that we were able to develop, where I could tell him anything. I was very honest. And it's what they say, like when you drop that facade with a microphone, you do kind of get your most kind of vulnerable emotional stuff. And I did feel that through Euphoric. My vocals, some of that is you know is was like 52 takes, of like singing the same thing over and over and over again. It's like incredible sort of work ethic, really. Yeah.
This far into your career, I mean, you've worked with some incredible people, like you said, Kim Petras, Rostam. You've also worked with what you've co-written for Shania Twain.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
that's pretty incredible. I mean, again, like you were saying, putting out into the universe. Would there be anyone? Who else would you want to collaborate with? Is there anyone in particular that you're burning to sort of work with in some way, shape, or form?
I mean, I would love to get in the studio with Madonna. It's always been a dream of mine,
Mhm.
just to sit there and write a song with her.
We'll
I
put it out
think
there. Put it out there.
put it out there, put it out there. I mean, she's another artist for me that just has always strived to sound like no one else.
Mm.
Um, we now know her as the mainstream pop kind of queen, but she was, when she came about, it was very different. It was very unique, and I feel like she's always tried to work with unique artists, producers, fashion designer. She's always like gone that extra mile to just, yeah, to create her own thing. Yeah, I would. It's always been a dream to just sit there. And I was very lucky with Shania, because I got to spend 3 days in the studio with her writing. So and you know, the things you get to learn, and the thing, you know, the stories, the exchange, the kind of human element of like, you know, you don't always get that really, you know, and some singers, you know, don't even, you don't even come into contact at all. I mean, my friend was on the Beyonce record. He produced one song. He never met her, Beyonce, you know, and but I like artists who want to, and I know that Madonna, she always wants to be in the studio with whoever she works with. So that's quite amazing. That is. Um, yeah, that would be it would be quite scary, but it'd be amazing.
Oh, I'm sure. But again, she's an artist, you know, I was having this conversation with someone recently about artists, you know, pushing the boundaries, and she's definitely one of those artists that does that. And I can also see that in yourself as well as the people that you sort of draw influence from in your
Yeah,
music.
yeah. I don't want to sound like an you know, bit arrogant saying I want to push about. I just like people and artists that, you know, it has something different
Yeah.
about them, you know.
So
Yeah.
going back to Mighty Hoopla, obviously the festival itself is extremely well known in the queer community, has a huge LGBT following. You have a very quickly growing LGBT
Mm.
following. What message would you give ahead of your performance for the LGBT fans that you have?
Gosh, just that I feel so grateful to have a grow like I feel so grateful because for me, the LGBTQ plus community has always welcomed me in, and I I feel like it's, I don't know, I just I've always I've always just, yeah, I've always loved, I love everyone, but you know, my brother's gay, some of my best friend, most of my best friends are gay. You know, everyone I love, I mean, everyone is queer now. My mum's queer, I'm queer. You know, everyone is like embracing, uh, you know, this. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I just have a lot of love for, yeah, for my audience and for that audience. It's a very collective, loving, fun, you know, embracing audience that I think really has, you know, the strongest, even though it's about identity and a lot of people are questioning identity and whatever, I think it has a very strong identity of like love and expression, really. And I just feel very grateful, really, um,
I know,
because
I
I
know
know,
the crowd is going to be absolutely loving you. You know, you can already see online the love that you have from the community.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah. That's the thing. I think that's the key word is a community, you know, and I think it's the strongest community out there, and we're all striving for a community at the moment. And I think, you know, especially coming off the Kim Petras tour, that was really special because there were a lot of kids that you could tell were young, and it was their first gig of coming out, basically. There was a lot of young boys especially that were coming there, and you could see they were quite shy, and they were quite like, this was obviously one of their first kind of, you know, gigs really of like
yeah.
dressing up in a very feminine way and do it, and that felt really, it felt quite touching to be up on that stage and see that, you know, it was quite sort of like, it was quite a lot of yeah, I felt quite a big responsibility to like make sure that I gave them the most truest kind of performance of myself, because I was like, this is, you know, this is a big thing, and you want people, you want, you know, to have a good time and remember that moment. And I know Kim, speaking to Kim after a lot of the show, she was also like, you know, a lot of my fans, you know, this is their first time coming out and like coming to dressing up in a freedom and expression. And some of the cities we were at in Germany, these are quite like conservative cities still. And like, as we know, the whole of Europe is going more right wing. So it's like, yeah, it felt quite you know, quite important, quite a powerful night of music. So yeah, it's just like I like it, you know, that music has a meaning to it and can still you know, have such a powerful effect on people. I think you know, just grateful to be part of that, really.
Yeah, and Mighty Hoopla does carry that really strong inclusive message, and it's wonderful that you can be a
Yeah,
part
there's
of
quite, I mean, there's
it.
quite a lot of straight people that go to
There are,
Mighty Hoopla now. You know,
there are.
it's not that, you know, and I think that's testament to see, you know, the inclusiveness of it, you know. I can't remember. I went, was it last year? No, it wasn't last year. Yeah, maybe it was last year or year before. I was quite surprised at how, you know, how many straight people were there, and quite masked boys like going there, like to see, you know, and I was like, wow,
Yeah.
this is kind of it's interesting.
As part of it, it's it's important to see allies there as well, both performers and people that just go as punters.
Yeah,
So
I think, you
it
know,
is
that's
it's a
the,
great
you know, when
mix.
you hear, well, also it's like my dad, you know, used to go to gay club, go to Heaven and stuff in the 80s. And that was like, you know, a very inclusive, you know, that was important yeah, to, as you said, like allies are important, aren't they? You know?
Well, Georgia, thank you so much. It's
Yeah, thank
I could
you.
literally sit here like
I
your Shania
know.
Twain and talk all sorts of stories with you. But it's been such a pleasure to talk to you,
Yeah, you too.
and
Great question.